Hi, I'm Stephen Darrow, chair of our State Senate District 63 Republicans in South Minneapolis and Richfield. You may remember me as one of the guest co-hosts from a few months ago. It's my pleasure to return tonight for this special edition of Republican Roundtable, where we bring to you tonight two of our Congressional District 5 Republican leaders who are both running for office this November. Our first guest tonight is David Pasco.
How you doing?
Good.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Sure thing.
And so please tell us a little bit about yourself.
A little bit about myself, I suppose. I'm originally from a small town out in western New York. I worked on a dairy farm in high school and all that stuff. Went to college, went into the Navy. I was in the Navy for about 4 years on a destroyer and then an aircraft carrier. Deployed a couple of times, and then I came back home to New York. I was doing an MBA program. I got a little bored with that, working in radio for a while. Then I decided, why not move to Minneapolis and go to law school? So that's what brought me here, and I love it here. I've been here for over 2 years now. It's a wonderful place. It's a wonderful city. So that's a little bit about me, a little bit of my background, I suppose.
Well, that's quite an impressive background, David. So you go to law school at University of Minnesota?
University of Minnesota, yeah. I'm in my third year now, and I am so excited to be almost done. Like the worst thing is once you finished doing law school, you have to immediately start studying for the bar. And you know that, like going to med school, like you go to med school, you graduate, and then it's the next thing that you have to do. So same thing with law school. You graduate, everyone celebrates, you go out with your family, then the next day you start studying for the next thing that you have to do, which is passing the bar, which I'll be doing. It'll be a wonderful summer in 2014 when I'm doing that, but yeah.
And you're quite an accomplished person at balancing multiple tasks in your life all at the same time. In addition to your third year of law school, you're running for the Minneapolis Board of Estimate and Taxation.
That's right, yes, which usually by the time you're done saying that, people are bored and they don't want to talk to you anymore. Like you go up, you introduce yourself, you say the title of what you're running for, and it's such an obscure office, but it's such an important office, which is really why I decided to run for it in the first place. I've always been interested in finance and debt matters and those things. Those are like the heart of the problems that we face on a local level, on a national level, and that's kind of what motivated me to look at this race and get involved in it. It's something that I'm built to do. I like going into the little nitty-gritty details of a budget, as boring as that sounds, and kind of really pulling it apart.
Well, my experience working with you through our Congressional District 5 shows you have quite an impressive gift at being able to work with a budget. You are very helpful on that CD5 board in helping us maintain a great budget. You've helped our State Senate District too with one of our fundraisers.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what the position does.
Okay, well, the Board of Estimate and Taxation position,
yes.
So that it's kind of an obscure board, and you see them on some municipalities, not a lot. Like some big cities have them, some small cities have them. A lot of people don't know what it is because it's not unique to Minneapolis, but it's an important city with this function. And it's kind of interesting, in 2009, there was a ballot initiative that actually suggested maybe we should get rid of the board, and it was rejected by the voters just in the last election cycle. So people decided they want this board, they want it to be a really good final check on the spending that the city council and the mayor is putting forward. Now there are 7 people on the board by the city charter. There is the mayor, there are 2 city council people, which is the president of the Ways and Means Committee and the president of the city council. There is a park board representative, there is a library board representative, and then there are the 2 at-large elected members that's what I'm running for. I'm running for one of those 2 spots. And it's interesting because there are 7 statutory or members from the city charter, but one of those members, the library board member, doesn't exist anymore because the Minneapolis Library Board merged with the Hennepin County one. So now there are really only 6 functional members of the Board of Estimate and Taxation. Yeah. It's a really powerful position because they approve almost all of the tax rates for the city for all of the different funds, and I can go into that if you like. And they also approve all of the debt that the city council wants to put on. The city council can say, this is what our budget is. The mayor says, this is what we want to do with our finances. This is how much we want to borrow. This is how much we want to tax. But the Board of Estimate and Taxation is the one that actually approves that, which is a really amazing thing. And it's kind of interesting because there are all of these people that put so much faith in the city council, and they look at the city council as the one that's having this authority, but it's really the board that has the authority.
So with that authority, I mean, it sounds like it's an extremely powerful position in
Sure.
helping to have us as homeowners in Minneapolis pay lower property taxes
Sure.
because it hits our pocketbook very, very hard.
Absolutely.
I've seen my property taxes they're a lot higher
Right.
than in other cities where I've lived.
Well, since 2009, the city of Minneapolis has raised taxes twice. One of the years they voted to keep taxes at the same rate, and this year, interestingly, they're proposing a very small tax decrease for the city of Minneapolis, or at least a few of the board members are. Now, I think after 2009, after the 2009 elections in 2010, the board voted to put on a 6.5% tax increase. Now, some of the other members wanted to increase taxes at a lower rate, but they wanted to increase taxes. That's the important thing to remember. But they did get through a 6.5% tax increase, and you can do that with 4 votes. So 4 out of the 6 people voted for that. The next year, they voted to keep taxes the same. I think the third year, they raised them a little over 1%. And this year, they're saying, well, why don't we lower taxes by 1%? Conveniently, in an election year, they decided to lower the taxes by a little bit. But it's not really lowering the taxes overall, because the state of Minnesota just imposed a bunch of new tax increases to maybe ostensibly help out some of the municipalities with local government assistance, things like that. So even though the city of Minneapolis might decrease the taxes a little bit, the state has more than made up for that in tax increases this year. So it's not really that much of a decrease, unfortunately.
Yeah, seems like a lose-lose situation for us homeowners
Sure.
by having this partnership going on
Right.
with the 2 different governments.
One of the unfortunate things is the city of Minneapolis has set up a great number of funds. There's the general fund, there's the permanent police improvement fund, the public housing fund, the park and recreation fund, things like that, the big ones that people pay attention to. But there are the little ones. I'll give you an example. I think it's called the Shade Tree Disease Prevention Fund, and that's a very specific fund, and I think it was created because a lot of people in Minneapolis wanted to make sure that the city government was spending money on the projects that they champion, not just putting a bunch of money into the general fund to, I don't know, give out to stadium developers or things like that. You look at that fund specifically, the Shade Tree Disease Prevention Fund, and that's an important thing for people in the city of Minneapolis. I don't know if you know anything about the emerald ash borer. It's an invasive species, and it's killing a lot of the ash trees, which is a problem because decades ago, the city just planted ash tree after ash tree after ash tree on city boulevards. Now, instead of putting something in the general fund, maybe make it more transparent and put it in the Tree Disease Prevention Fund. But some people don't want to do that, and that's something that I support because that's something that the people of Minneapolis support.
That's wonderful. So it's interesting that you mentioned that these tax hikes occurred in the 2009 year. And
or right after the 2009 election.
And yet that's, right after their election. And then, interestingly, that's when our economy was hurting. So as a homeowner, I noticed that with our struggles, they're raising taxes. And yet, now that the election's approaching, that they tout this, your opponents tout their decrease, but yet it certainly doesn't bring it back to earlier levels.
It makes one a little bit cynical about politics, doesn't it?
Yes.
When you look at something like that and you say the first time in office when they had enough time between re-election and when they just were sworn in, they're raising taxes by the most that they did. And this is not just the last 4 years. In the last decade, the city of Minneapolis raises taxes. There has not been a tax decrease in the city of Minneapolis in recent memory, which is why people are making such a big deal about a 1% tax decrease proposal.
Right.
It is special, but it's kind of too little too late, unfortunately.
Exactly. Yeah. And yet with these taxes, How has this helped our city's credit rating?
Oh, well, the unfortunate thing is the city's credit rating has been recently downgraded by Moody's. That happened in July of this year. And they did it because of the pension obligations that the city has, which is a long-term problem, long-term debt problem that the city of Minneapolis is really going to have to tackle. A few years ago, the state of Minnesota passed legislation saying that municipalities could bond, could go into debt to pay for pension obligations. So that made it allowable for people to kick things down the road, which is what the city government does with a lot of issues, not just pensions, which is the primary reason why the credit rating was downgraded. And I'll take a quick moment to say why that's bad. The reason why that's bad is the lower the credit rating, the more expensive it is to borrow. So the more we dig ourselves into debt, the more expensive debt becomes, and it puts us in a downward spiral, and it's a problem that we have to address. But as I was saying, it's not just pensions that the city is going into debt on. It's the local things, the local street repavements, local developments, things that the city knows that it's going to spend money on. The park board, for example, has a 10, 20-year plan, 30, 40-year plan that they go out and say, this is the land that we want to buy, this is what we're going to do with it. And they try to grab up that land, but there's no long-term financial plan to deal with that. Now, there's just debt.
Yeah.
Debt is the long-term financial plan for the city right now.
So how would you help solve these issues with your role as on the board of estimate and taxation in a pay-as-you-go program, as you're mentioning?
Well, one of the things that I champion is a pay-as-you-go system, and I don't mean cutting out all of city debt, saying we're not going to take on any more city debt, because that would tank the credit rating even faster, because it would be a shock to the system. You need to avoid a shock to the city of Minneapolis while simultaneously putting the city in the right direction, going in a way that they're actually going to start paying down more of their debt, not adding a lot more new debt for the bigger situations that they have, the bigger projects and municipal bonding things that they do. So a pay-as-you-go system would start with having maybe 5%. Statutorily, the city council passes a law saying we're not going to bond for any more than 95% of a We're not going to bond for any more than 95% of a project. We're going to pay 5% of it up front. And then over the years, they're going to increase that by 1% a year. So it's a gradual increase. It's not something that's going to completely take over the city and make it impossible for them to go pave roads or go do the big developments and go buy new parkland to make the park system even better than it already is. But it's going to wean ourselves off of always paying for long-term projects with long-term debt. We know that we're going to pay for this stuff. Why not pay for it more upfront as we go?
David, you have done so much. We really appreciate you being here today. For our guest tonight, there's a unique voting system occurring on November 5th. And so with our last half minute,
Sure.
Do you want to just quickly say what
Yes.
this rank order system is all about?
There are 4 people running for 2 spots. The 4 people running for 2 spots are going to be on one area of the ballot. You rank your top 3 choices, and the top 2 vote getters are the ones that will go on to the Board of Estimate and Taxation. And that's as succinct as I can explain ranked choice voting in the limited time that we have.
So in a nutshell, please rank David number 1.
David Pasco.
David Pasco,
Yeah.
number 1. There's 2 Davids, so don't be confused. Correct. So
Right.
David Pasco, number
Thank you.
1. We really thank you, David, for being here tonight.
Sure, I enjoyed it.
And good luck. I know you're going to come out a victor on November 5th.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi, thank you and welcome back. We have now brought you our next guest tonight, who is also a CD5 officer, Jacquelyn America. I've worked with her as chair in our Senate district. She represents our congressional district as a CD5 secretary. Jacquelyn, it's an honor to have you here tonight.
It's very kind of you to have me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So Jacquelyn's running for the Golden Valley City Council race this November 5th. It's a competitive race. I know you're going to come out a winner.
Oh,
Tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, my name is Jacquelyn Smith America, and I'm a lifelong resident of Golden Valley. In fact, I went to school there. My grandparents were one of the first people to build a house on Lake Sweeney Twin Lake. My son is involved in the school district, and we're involved in scouts and baseball. I coach baseball and basketball, and I feel that my background kind of qualifies me to be a council person. I have 30 years of theater arts background. I have 15 years of successful sales and marketing. I worked in annuities and mortgage and in insurance. And then currently I've been working as a massage therapist and physical therapist in the healing arts for 7 years.
That's a great service you've been doing for the community all these years, and so active in different facets of the Golden Valley community. It's quite impressive.
I do it all. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. No, you do. So is there a specific issue that got you interested in going into this race?
Yep. Golden Valley has several issues going on right now. First of all, we have a proposed tax levy increase of 3.22% regarding a $17 million budget plan for 2014-15. Included in that budget are things like we're talking about building a community center. We did a survey of citizens in Golden Valley, and 17% of the people will use, for sure, are going to use the community center, but 28% for sure will not use it. And so that's, that will take a lot of bonding. If people aren't going to use it, why do, there's other options. Another thing is the Botanu light rail transit. What's a little different, I know the south end is having some problems, but the proposed site is right on a historical, historical Theodore Wirth Park. And there's wetlands and woodlands right in that area, and it's a real small area. But why would you build on wetlands? I mean, it's pretty. But that's pretty much the main reason why I'm running for city council, is to that Botanu run. A lot of citizens are really upset because they want it to run downtown Golden Valley, but it's over on the far east corner of Golden Valley, which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and it impacts our Minneapolis community too, because
sure.
This is a continuation of the formerly called the Hiawatha Line, and now it's been renamed the Blue Line, and so their plan is to extend it from the Target Field area out up to through your community, and then eventually to
like the Maple Grove, Brooklyn Park area.
Yeah, the Brooklyn Park.
And it's funny because one of their biggest selling points to Golden Valley residents is, you're 10 minutes from downtown, and when we went to this meeting with Hennepin County, we were like, oh, it takes me 7 minutes to get downtown. So it's great that the federal government is coming into our little Golden Valley and telling us, oh, you know what, you should be like Chicago. Well, if we had 6 million people living in the cities, I could see light rail. I've used it, I've enjoyed it in other, the East Coast, West Coast, and Chicago, but I just don't think there's a need for it right now in this area.
I'm so glad that you're running to help represent the community on an issue that a lot of the people in the community share about the light rail, and so we need an excellent spokeswoman like you.
Thank you.
And so on November 5th, make sure to vote for Jacquelyn America on the Golden Valley City.
Smith. Jacquelyn Smith. Yep, that's
Jacquelyn Smith.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. And later on we'll add the America, but it might sound weird to people, so we're just keeping it Smith.
Sounds good. Well, so you've got your very nice name there on the ballot, and so just make sure this is not, if you're one of our Golden Valley viewers watching us on our YouTube channel, make sure that you vote for Jacquelyn, because unlike Minneapolis, it does not have the rank order balloting. It is a traditional ballot where she will be one of...
And we have 2 at-large, we have 8 candidates running for 2 at-large seats. So,
Okay. And so, also, you have many roles, and your role in our Congressional District 5 is being secretary, and then also you are in charge of voter integrity.
Yep, I'm the coordinator for voter integrity. That deals with, I train election judges and poll challengers during our elections to ensure that we have a fair election. I have some slides here. To vote, you have to be, a citizen. You have to be 18 years old, and you have to live in the state of Minnesota within 20 days. Election judges We have this great need for election judges right now because it's really important with the ranked choice voting. In fact, the city of Minneapolis just sent out a call notice for 100 Republican election judges. Election judges, it's really fun. It's the whole day, so it's from 7 until about 9, 10 o'clock at night. You get compensated for your time, and you do things like set up the polls, you count the ballots, you're in charge of how the machine runs, and making sure that the election day runs smoothly, and that our next slide goes over some of the qualifications. Like you can't...
Like who can vote?
Who can vote is we just went over that. You have to be 18. You have to be in that precinct to vote.
Right.
Some other things to be just moving on to the election judge. There's requirements. You have to, when you show up to be an election judge, you have to show your Minnesota ID to be an election judge. You have to. What are some other things? You have to speak English, and you cannot be a spouse or a parent of any candidates. So you can't have, can't be in that inner family circle. The next slide would be potential election day problems. So.
Yeah. let's talk about that for a little bit, because have there been any examples of voter fraud?
There's a lot of stuff going on out there. Just in the last 2012 election, there was an election judge who listened to this man's story. He was like 22, 23 years old. He didn't live in the state. He didn't go to school here. He forgot to vote in the state he went to. And she looked at him and said, "Oh, well, do you have someone that can vouch for you?" So an hour and a half later, his friend came in and vouched for him, and that's illegal. And I challenged their vote, which they have to take an oath and sign. And then I made Minnesota majority aware of, they prosecute, and I'll tell you about them in 2 seconds here, but they go after these voters. It's huge. It really costs us elections. People they go, there isn't voter fraud because there's not a lot of convictions. Well, it takes a lot of money, and it's a long process to convict someone. And then their vote still counts.
Right.
So,
and haven't there been examples that have been real close in these real close recent elections?
Yes.
Where voter fraud may have made the difference?
Oh, sure. Yep. When you have 200 votes, and then all of a sudden 1,000 votes show up on the Iron Range for Al Franken. I mean, it's kind of weird. Another thing that's really important
too. And they have no way of going back and discarding ballots if they do track down somebody.
Yep. It's a 5-year term in jail, and it's a $10,000 fine to commit voter fraud. Another thing we had a problem with is in the Cedars area in Minneapolis, where it's a big Somali population. The election judge continuously allowed the same interpreter to help a whole group of people in a special election in 2010. An interpreter can only help 3 people the whole entire day. And she allowed these people to come in and within groups. And we had a candidate had handed out a card with his picture on it. And between the 2 poll challengers, they counted 76 of those for the candidate. And he only got 36 votes at the end of the day. So, there's voter fraud.
Yeah.
In fact, I have a video that's really great.
Yeah, let's pause and take a look at that.
And to the Fox News voter fraud unit now. Remember the longtime Ohio poll worker who was accused of voting 6 times in the presidential election last November? Well, she did admit voting more than once and defiantly challenged prosecutors about it. Well, this past week, she appeared in court and is now convicted. Melanie Richardson is the veteran Hamilton County poll worker, that's in Cincinnati. She pled no contest to 4 counts of illegal voting. Reports say she even admitted voting 3 times for a relative who sadly has been in a coma for the last 11 years, since 2003. Well, after the November election, she denied she intended to commit voter fraud and said she would fight the case for, quote, Mr. Obama and Mr. Obama's right to sit as President of the United States, unquote.
So that's a pretty impressive
She was convicted and is serving 6 years for that. So it's really important. We really need election judges in Minneapolis. If you can't commit to a full day, we also have the poll challenger program. That's a voluntary position. You don't have to do a whole day. You can do the morning before you go to work. The evening, we've had people go in the morning, go to work, and then come in the evening. A poll challenger, you don't have any contact with the voter. You're basically the election judge's best friend for that day. You help remind them. There's a training. There's about an hour training class. You come in with a packet. When you finish the training, we give you a certificate from the Republican Party or from a candidate that says you're certified and you can be in the polls. And so you're our eyes and ears to make a fair election. And we've gotten some really great information and leads to voter fraud. So.
And when the voters, one last thing in our final half minute, would the voters register on the website that we're showing as a Republican person, or is this just a nonpartisan position?
We need election judges so badly. You can go on Minneapolis's city website and sign up to be an election judge, and then just let us know. I'm providing some email addresses.
And our viewers
my
will see
email.
that.
Yep, and you can see my email too. And then there's also a CD5 voter integrity at AOL.com email you can contact me through. So,
well, thank you so much for being our guest tonight on this
Yeah,
special
it's been
edition.
a pleasure.
Good luck. I know you're going to come out a winner on November 5th and help us with our balloting on election night. Please sign up and be an election judge or poll challenger. Thank you for joining us for this special edition. I'm Stephen Darrow. Thank you, Jacquelyn, and thank you earlier to David Pasco.